So yeah.
Oh, with your military, did you were you ever in the military?
No,
No, neither was I.
near, near, nearly made it there, but
Yeah,
yeah, ended up being a car mechanic instead. So
gotcha.
yeah. Worked in plenty of Army Navy Land Rovers. I worked in them for 2 years, believe it or not. Had to like oxyacetylene them, cut them up and sell them off as spare parts.
Hmm.
We used to get the Army Land Rovers coming, so
Yeah,
that was my job from when I was 17 to 19 years old, just before I went to music college. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well this thing might loop, but I've got it turned way down. So, and I'm thinking I need to cut my mic up a little, judging from the meters. But I think we're good as long as I don't shout. I shouldn't clip. And all right, it looks like we're doing pretty good. So wow, I'm. I gotta be honest with you, Roy. I'm kind of blown away by this video you did, this thing with the Not Again solo, and I've got a lot of people asking me a lot of questions, and I think the most pressing one on everyone's mind is, where the hell have you been, man? Where have you been all our lives? Have you? So you live in Scotland now.
Yeah,
Have you've lived in Scotland all your life, right? Or what's just give us
no.
a little bit of a backstory, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to do two things before you start that. I'm going to go ahead and mute the music. We're good there. Just hit stop there, and I'm going to stop the ticker tape just for a little while, because that is almost like someone talking while we're trying to talk. So we'll cut that.
Okay.
There we go. A lot better. So yeah, to get it again. Where do you come from exactly?
Okay. Yeah, I was born in the middle of nowhere, right in the middle of the sticks, in a place that no one really knows about, in the southwest of Scotland. A place called Dumfries, and really the question, I suppose, of where I've been all this time has been everywhere, but nowhere really until now. So yeah, I was basically working as a car mechanic in my younger years, and then I went from there to music college when I was 19. Started guitar when I was 3 years old. I'd been playing in the sticks, listening to bluegrass music for all that time, and basically brought myself up between playing classical music and bluegrass. There was nobody else around at the time. You know, remember the old days when it was tape decks and record players. In fact, we didn't even have a record player because we couldn't afford one at the time. So we had a gramophone, which I killed my parents' record collection. And ended up in music college, 19 years old. Went from there to Edinburgh. Left Edinburgh to go and sit my trade in Ireland for 5 years as a session musician. So I cut my teeth there, playing in theatre pit bands and doing some sessions for a lot of musicians, artists, and the major recording studios across there. Left Ireland for Scotland to join a band to tour for 4 years.
The Iron Horse, right?
That's correct. Yeah. That was a contemporary Scottish act.
You guys came to America at one point.
We did. Yeah.
Didn't you play at was it Disney World or Disneyland?
Played at Disney for 2 weeks, man.
Which one, World or Land? Florida or California?
It was Florida.
Okay, yeah. That's
so we're in Epcot for 2 weeks. We went to play like 3 times a day.
Wow, what a gig!
Yeah, it was great.
That's amazing.
We got like free range of the whole place, and you know yourself, it's absolutely enormous, the place. So, and lo and behold, it was one of the things that really struck me about that gig was I actually thought, I'm actually sure it was Sean Lane that was in the front row of that gig.
Yeah.
That was
what
that
year?
was the turn of millennium. That was 2000. That was quite a big year for Disney. And I wouldn't, of course, being a big fan of Sean Lane.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, the guy's in the front row, you know. So it was like, it was a pretty big deal for me. Fortunately, I didn't suck that gig. So
Sorry, I know I got too loud on my clip. But yeah, I mean that very well could be possible. He was doing a lot of going back and forth with the Jonas Hellborg gigs,
Right.
and I think a lot of flights may have been had international flights. Well, Memphis does have an international airport, but I mean there could have been some layover stuff. It could have been anything. But Sean Lane is kind of he's very difficult to confuse him with somebody else. So that's a very very possible. So you
Yeah,
played. So you were in Iron Horse, and isn't there a story that I've seen where while with them, didn't you run into like some where the John McLaughlin picks? Was that on a gig with Iron
yeah,
Horse?
that was we're doing a European tour through. Trying to remember where I'd just come from Finland and then through France, and then we were going to be going off to Germany, and in the the French part of the tour in Lorient, I bumped into some guys and said, "Oh, we've got like some picks you might be interested in. Here's some John McLaughlin picks." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's really interesting." And by that point, I've been playing like this kind of angle picking technique for about I don't know, I'd say started when I was 23, so I've been like a good 27 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've been actually at it. I kind of started when I was about 17, but I didn't get serious about it until I was about 23. But these picks kind of seem to be like a war on each side, and I got thinking about it because I didn't really like the tone that was happening with the picks from how I was holding the pick parallel from not playing it parallel to the string. So I decided I was going to copy this idea of this warring look on these picks,
Yeah.
and that changed my whole perception of like how guitar picks should be held, and multi-art picking came on significantly from that point. The tone improved, and instead of the tone coming out of as a kind of rough grind against the string, it came out pure and true.
Mm-hmm.
So that got me thinking about my own design, but I didn't really get my own design until obviously 2017 when I moved up to Glasgow with my wife. So yeah, it's the Fat Boy pick is now available.
The Fat
From
Boy
that.
pick. So that reminds me. So not to embarrass you, but I'm going to pull this up on the screen. So
Excuse me.
I'm going to make it even bigger to cover the screen, but I'm not going to cover your head. So these words were recently spoken about you. Roy Marchbank is the fastest guitar player I have ever seen. With the use of his Fat Boy pick, he is able to glide across the strings at a speed that sounds impossible. You know who said that?
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
it's survive.
Steve Vai just said that last Sunday. And I'm telling you, man, I know it sounds like I'm getting old, but it's just amazing to me that the Devil's guitar player from Crossroads on a Sunday, that just means like if you'd have come flying into that scene and said, "Oh yeah," you would have taken. Of course, what's Karate Kid took him out already. So, but wow, I mean. Yeah, you could. Well, you could have. That's what we got to do. We got to get you to challenge the kid, the Karate Kid. Now, yeah. So he beat him last time. What do you think about that, man? That is some huge acknowledgement. And I say that obviously not to try to embarrass you, but you'd mentioned the Fat Boy pick, and you've got the combination of that pick, but you also have a very unique, interesting, almost like martial arts style of picking, alternate picking that precedes you inventing that pick. Can you tell us a little bit about that? You Sarad, I believe you call it. What's?
Yeah. Well, Sarad's picking it comes from obviously the Middle East. I didn't even know that Sarad was a thing until about 10 years ago. Until I went to Uzbekistan and did the concert there with a 20-piece orchestra, the traditional orchestra of Saudiana, and of course they pick like that there and have been picking like that for hundreds of years, if not thousands. And of course that's travelled all the way down through the Silk Road. It's gone the gypsy route into Romania, spread out over into all parts of Europe.
Yeah.
So you've got like the classic gypsy picking, and they have this thing from playing with the wrist and forearm rotation. But I thought what came natural to me, what was really strange, was the actual the way to pick came very natural to me, but I didn't actually know at the point that I started doing it that it was a thing. So I developed it round about this thing that felt natural, and I applied all these muting techniques that kind of felt natural to me as well. Of course, when I went there, I realised this was actually a playing style, although it wasn't exactly the same as what I developed for myself, but hence the hybrid part of it.
Gotcha, right.
But the idea behind it is obviously like hundreds of years old. So I wasn't about to argue with something that's been around for a long time and feels natural. So I've just kind of went along with the flow, which is always wise. And when it comes to learning anything or for yourself, and knowledge of self is everything. So yeah, I watched these guys, but honestly, some of these players, these parts next to the wood, like in the Middle East, like all the way down from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all that area, man, they've got all these really highly developed, almost really ancient kind of flamenco techniques and techniques with the pick that was kind of eye-opening to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to actually going back out there and meeting up with some of my old friends.
Do they do that on a guitar, or they do it on a traditional Indian instruments, or is that kind of like, so you're not having, if they're not doing it, the reason I ask is if they're not doing it on a guitar per se, then there may not even be a place for them to really mute it without sticking their hands on the very strings themselves. So is it something like that?
Yeah, well, there's like all manner of different lute type instruments that's applied to, like the oud, for example,
Yeah.
It's a fretless instrument. So, and they have these muting techniques, obviously, in the oud that are kind of similar to the way that guitars are developed. But because of the nature of an oud and the height of the action, it's quite easy to do a lot of the muting without any sort of aids, if you know what I mean. It's not got like really stupidly low action, so you don't need any sort of additional help down in the bottom end of the guitar. It's all done with the left hand. So when you're crossing strings, like the tip of the fingers will mute the string as you're crossing to keep everything silent. It's really interesting stuff.
So that's when I hear like some of your soloing on like the grand design, especially on that song, and then there's sections where it tricks the ear because you're not muting on the actual where you're picking. What you've just said, like you're using the fingers to actually mute, I guess, in a way, these notes at the same time that you're using. So that's finger. It sounds like you've got this complete finger independence going on.
Yeah. Well, the way that I'm muting is both left and right hand, because I have some guitars set with the action ridiculously low. I have to have as many muting aids as possible to keep things really super clean. But the muting idea I've kept a hold of in the pick hand kind of adds a pizzicato effect, and depends how hard you pinch the pick. It's a technique in itself, and I've been kind of developing that over 15 years to the stage now where I can actually play an acoustic without the aid of any kind of rags, like especially if I've got a higher action. The higher action helps the whole muting thing. But obviously in the electric, for some of the runs that are more extreme, I need the lower action there to be able to acquire that. So it's finding a healthy balance between the two. Some tracks require that, some tracks don't. But the finger independence thing came really, I mean, we're getting back to the Sean Lane thing here and like his piano playing. And watching the linear technique of Art Tatum and how the individual notes just pop out at you and rhythmically perfect as well. And you find that in Sean's phrasing and the way that he plays. He has that facility that's really difficult to acquire. So lots of practice there. What I've noticed is with piano players, they seem to have this highly developed finger independence thing, and I think that might have a lot to do with the fact that obviously the finger's going to have to lift off the key, so you're fighting gravity this way, whereas the guitar's going out that direction. And I think possibly, and I'm maybe stand to be corrected here, but I think possibly one of the reasons that Sean had such a highly developed left hand was his stride playing in the piano, and the fact that he had that Tatum playing off to a T.
Yeah, yeah.
So when it came to playing like anything with his left hand, he had all those things happening, but like the hammer-ons from nowhere they talk about, which is kind of also closely sonically similar to some of the reverse banjo roll things like you would get from like Jerry Reed, but with the fingers hammered on, but the notes are just bang on the money.
Yeah.
So he's tripping from like a triplet sort of a type of thing to 5 notes in the same space, and it's just on the money. So yeah, I think that's got a lot to do with a lot of his piano playing years. I don't know how long even let Sean play piano. Maybe you can enlighten me there.
Well, he's they had a piano at Mamaw's house where he lived, and when so he started on the piano, playing on the piano, and he says in a few of his clinics that are on the YouTube channel, he says in there how he started out on the piano and wasn't really interested in the guitar until he was at high school or junior high school when they started building the recording studio in the school. He built the first recording studio inside of a school in Memphis. And off the top of my head, I can't think of the high school name, which is crazy. But yeah, so he had definitely started with the piano, and then he said that when he started on the guitar, it just came really natural to him by the time he got into the guitar. And there's a crazy video of him playing on that very piano. It's all black and white, and the VHS tape is all like crazy, so it makes it even more Roadrunner cartoonish. It's just like, God, this guy's ripping fast on this thing. But yeah, I had one night in the studio with him. We were recording this other band, and this is really my only piano story with Sean that blew my mind. I was sitting in the back of the control room, and in front of me, so shooting away from me, and I can show on the screen, going forward was the piano. So I'm looking at the high end is by me, you know what I mean, and the low end's that way, out further away. Sean is in the front. He's running the recording of these guys in there that are playing bluegrass, but right. Sean has Bach playing on a jam box inside the control room at the same time. So I'm sitting there, and let's just say our minds were pretty lofty on various organic things that grow naturally, and nothing funky, but it started freaking me out a little bit because I was like, it's like listening to two radio stations at the same time. So I'm hearing these guys play bluegrass and banjo and the whole 9 yards, and then I'm hearing dun, 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 going at the same time. And Sean was just laughing. He just thought it was funny the way they were syncing up and going in and out of key with each other. So the guys start playing Brown Eyed Girl in the key of G, right? And they're doing the regular the way that Van Morrison tune goes, and Bach on the jam box goes into Air on a G string. Of all songs, it starts up, and Sean he was smoking a cigarette, and he's leaned over the console, and he had like an ash like this long on the end of the cigarette. He just lifts up, ash goes flying, rolls over to the piano, and I'm looking at it like from the side, just starts ripping these runs up and down the neck in the key of G, but he's going in and out of the box. You know, he's not staying in traditional G major, I guess, or whatever, either one of them. I think they're both in G major. And I'm telling you, I had an out-of-body experience, and I told him after that, I mean, it was such a shock. I said, you are a better piano player than anybody I'd ever seen him. I'd never seen anybody play like Art Tatum, and I didn't even know it existed, you know. And, you know, he said...
He was right next to you.
Yeah, he is right in front of me, and he was like, oh, that's just some Art Tatum licks. He was just sitting there just doing these Art Tatum runs. And that's how I got turned on to Art Tatum. I'd never heard of Art Tatum. So... yeah, that was the craziest. That in my mind, probably my favorite memory of Sean. The way he because these guys we were recording were a little boring. I mean, it wasn't bad. They were just recording to be recording, you know. And we were getting paid for the session, and they just wanted to have a CD. They weren't putting out a record. They just wanted to record. And so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this thing turns into, I don't know, some kind of like Twilight Zone episode. But he mentioned what you're talking about with the percussiveness of finger independence that Art Tatum had, and I think Oscar Peterson was pretty much the same way, I would say. And Phineas Newborn Jr., that's another one. He was, I know there's Phineas Newborn Jr. did that one gig where he did the entire song with his left hand only. So he's like jumping from there to there, up and down the neck. That's called blues for the left hand only. You can look that up. Not you, the listener.
There's definitely a lot to be said for like studying the works of all these guys and the way they played and the technique.
Yeah.
And not just like, pianists, but I mean sax players, like violinists, whatever. It's like there's a lot to learn from multi-instrumentalists in general, and like not just guitar. I mean, now when I listen to music, I don't listen to guitar players at all. I'm more interested in orchestrations, and if I'm listening to anybody, it's usually like it could be some Indo-European guy like in the mountains and who knows where, and like playing some bizarre instrument I've never heard before. I'm really interested in that side of music now at this stage in my life, and I'm trying to expand my musical horizons. But certainly, like when it comes to people like Tatum, when I first heard Tatum, I was what I really found was amazing about his approach was it never seemed to inflict on the melody. He had this really amazing way where the melody was always prominent, but he had all these crazy runs running around in the background, like all these arpeggiated sequences, while the melody was just like right there in your face. And I really thought that was real amazing, because it never seemed to stop. It was like this never-ending sort of swirling massive notes, but it wasn't something that took away from what the message was or the melody was trying to say. And I thought, right, okay, I've not heard that way of piano being played before. Of course, Oscar Peterson took it to the next level.
I think, I agree.
And then you hear, like, obviously, Chick Corea and all these other amazing pianists that kind of came out after that. It's just, you can't help but be spellbound when you're sat next to it. And I don't really get into the music as much when I'm listening to it as I do when it's actually a live presentation. So when I'm hearing someone in front of me play it, it has this almost spiritual kind of like knocks me off a perch sort of type of thing that I don't get when I've just got a set of cans in my ears.
Yeah,
it's like that whole feeling's there. So like when I first heard Chick Corea playing down in Manchester all those years ago, like I think it was like with Frank Gambale and I think it was Steve Smith. Or no, it wasn't Steve Smith. He was with that, doesn't matter. But I mean, wow. I went straight from that concert and then straight up to seeing Stanley Jordan in the Queen's Hall all live. So my ego was pretty much crushed after seeing Frank Gambale and Stanley Jordan and those gigs. So that was a real eye opener, and I've been listening to them for years. That was the strangest thing. But when I actually heard them in the flesh, in concert, it had a completely different impact on me. So, yeah.
Do you play? Do you play?
It's actually be over, so we can actually get out to playing live, my friend.
Yeah. Amen.
And hearing these guys again playing live.
Do you play any piano? Do you have any?
I dabble.
I
dabble.
Yeah.
I dabble. Certainly not to any sort of standard like Sean Lane or these guys. No. I dabble. And I mean by dabble, I mean I'll know a few chords and a couple of scales, and I mean dabble. I'm not talking even the ability to improvise. I just kind of look at it and go, okay, I know where the chords are, I know where all the notes are, and I'm going to do this with it. So it's kind of,
I can play the first bars of the Charlie Brown song that Linus and Lucy by Vic Girardi, I think was his name. I used to play it so wrong too, because I played bass for years, so my timing was fine. And once I got the don 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 don, and I was working at a church, of all places, and the musical director for the church walked into the there's in a church there's pianos in almost every room, and so he walked in and I was over there playing my little version of Charlie Brown on it, and he literally walked up, pushed me to the side. He's like, sit. He goes, move over. He's like, no. He goes, I can't let you, and he literally said this. I goes, I can't let you murder Charlie Brown like that. And he goes, he goes, it's up here, and he goes to the black keys, and he goes, it's right here. And he goes, and this part's over here, down, da, 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 down, down, down. And then he showed me the change, the down, da, down, down, down. And that's all I can play. That's it. That's all I can get all the way up to the change and then start over. That's it.
Yeah, well, you're playing more than me, my friend.
So here's a good question. That'll lead into this a little bit, because I wanted to ask your thoughts on this. And that is the concept of shred. Versus, say, jazz improvisation. Would you consider somebody like Art Tatum or an Oscar Peterson a shredder? I mean, that's not really, that wasn't a thing back then. But I mean, what do you feel the concept of shred even is?
Well, there's two ways you can look at it. You can look at it as a fun, which isn't so bad.
Right.
You're putting the fun issue back into what is something that has technically some extreme merit, or you can look at it as some derogatory slight on, or some passive aggressive statement on something that is an art form.
Yeah.
I think I can't see how you would put something like Art Tatum or Oscar Peterson or Alan Holdsworth or Charlie Parker down as anything that's to do with shred.
With shred, yeah.
It doesn't, Gumbali and these guys, they're putting out stuff that is musically really, they're at a level where just to even think about titling it, that doesn't seem to, it doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
Me personally, right? I don't know. That's my own view on it. It's a strange title, and I mean, I remember before shred became a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've got mixed views on it. I can see how it can be a positive thing. I can see how it can be misleading.
There's an excitement. I mean, there's an excitable quality to it when it's done right, and I think in a certain place and time, in a rock setting, like especially heavy metal. I think that it became so competitive back in the late 80s, and maybe even before then. There were people before then, obviously, that were like Eddie Van Halen in the late 70s, and he wasn't really shredding, but he did, the double-handed tapping thing. So your solos started sounding faster and faster in rock songs, and then it just seems to me that that it kind of got co-opted by the metal people, Not really originated there, but because Van Halen was not a heavy metal band. They were a rock band, just traditional rock.
They were a lot of fun, and
yeah, exactly.
I think excuse me, for certainly how I remember Van Halen. For me, it was like a license to have fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I first really got into Van Halen, when I first heard Van Halen 1, the first album, I was like, man, this is
Eruption.
That light bulb thing goes off in your head. It's like, especially when you're I was 10, I'm like, oh my God, really? What is this? And because way back, the early 80s, the late 70s, there was no internet, obviously. There was barely television. With VHS was still a thing that had to come into some sort of fruition. We had guitar magazines sometimes, and so we were limited as to how to see what was going on here with this sound. And of course, I would later see in television in this rock school thing, this guy going, and I was like, that's how it's done. Because I've been trying everything. I've been and I said, delay. What is it? What's going on here? I couldn't figure it out. And of course, when you're 10, 11 years old, you're just going, give me the information. You can't get it.
Well, you can, and then there's the whole thing about Ace Frehley from Kiss, on that record, Kiss Alive 2, you know, that was like 76. And when he did the guitar solo on that record, he did some double-handed tapping on it. And that's, I don't know that a lot of people even remember that, but by the time I had heard Eruption, I was like, man, that's kind of like that Ace Frehley solo, because apparently, you know, he had the guitar that the pickups light up and smoke comes out of it and all that other kind of thing. So my question to you then is, when you were doing this Sean Lane piece, did you feel like you were dissecting a shred piece? Because, you know, that Sean did not care for the term shredder. He did not.
I didn't. When I started going through it bar by bar, initially when I heard it for the first time, honestly, I didn't hear half of the things that I started to understand were within the solo until I'd actually started to break it down.
Yeah.
And when I took it bar by bar, it's almost like someone speaking really fast, and then when you have it repeat about 4 or 5 times, you go, oh, that's what he was saying, or she was saying, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
When I started unraveling it, there was like, it's like this Pandora's box. Worlds were opening up left, right, and centre of like, oh, here's a bit of Steve Morse. Here's a bit of like, you know, oh, that was a little bit Holdsworthish sort of thing going on there. But I mean, and I'm thinking, okay, that's a bit of country going on in there as well. So it was all this, like, all these tools were just like emptied into this box, and he just offloaded and when you listen to it, it's sounding so melodic, but yet all these little ornamentations are inside the solo as well. And what I found the key was, certainly as something that I'd overlooked, was the simplicity in some of the ornamentation of what he's playing, because he's playing something that has got that real beautiful ornamentations into something that is like light and quick, but it stops almost like a split second after and goes into something else that's got like a little ornamentation and like more vibrato. So it could be these hammer-ons from nowhere, a little bit vibrato, then string bends, but the string bends don't sound like normal string bends. They sound more like pedal steel as opposed to just bending a string. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's so many influences within the one solo that I wasn't aware of before, and I completely bypassed it. As I say, it's one of those things that you don't really know it until you do it yourself. So you get your armchair experts that talk about the all-knowing, all-doing it, and then you get the guys that are doing, or as Bruce Lee said, it's not enough to know, one must do, and that's exactly what I experienced from taking his solo apart and actually learning it for myself note by note. It was like, oh, that's going on as well. Oh, okay. Oh, that's in there. So yeah, there was like all these little
in the
kernels
video
of knowledge.
Which section would you say it was the most difficult, that took the longest concentration until you had it just right? Can you recall?
That's difficult. I think the hammer-ons from nowhere sequences were some of the more complicated.
Yeah.
And it's not, the actual technique in itself is, when you're playing it slow, is relatively simple.
Yeah.
But it's not, what makes it complicated is like the way, the control. We're talking about the finger independence thing here. And when he's going from some groups of notes that are maybe like, you know, playing the triplet sort of type of, you know, almost like a jig time, which is jig time, is going like almost a 6/8 passage into something that's like a 5 passage, into something that is like going between basically like hemi-demis into like, you know, quarter notes. Yeah. But it's that quick and it's on the money, you know. It's not like any notes wasted. It's not like you can even afford to miss a note. Everything has got a purpose. It's not something, I'll put it this way, if you make a mistake, everybody's going to know it.
Yeah.
If you're playing a Sean Lane song and you make a mistake,
you did it.
Go, he didn't get that note right. It's a bit, it's a bit like a classical violinist, right?
Yeah.
If you're hearing one of those guys playing something like, let's say it's a Paganini piece, and it's like the 24th Caprice or whatever, you know. Yeah. If you drop a couple of notes, everybody's going to go, ooh. He's good, that one's not going to make the cut for the CD, you know. And Sean Lane solos are no different. It's kind of almost like they are a piece.
You did it so authentically, and you know, it begs the question. You know, we had we try to save all the questions that people sent to us, but there was a lot of questions about the gear that you use to get that tone. And so, can you explain a little bit about that? I know you've got the VGA guitar and everything, but there's a lot more into it than just the guitar.
Yeah. Well, the way that I work everything really when I'm recording is I get the clean sound right, and the clean sound being that I still have to have a sufficient enough dynamic range, but I still have the sound. I have a limiter, not compression.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's limited so that the notes don't get crushed, so they don't allow some out. But it's still enough so when I actually bang the hell out of the string, it doesn't come out and cut your head off. So it's so basically what I do is I'll squash the limiter to death with some kind of either high output pickup, or I'll have some kind of a pedal that will produce a lot of gain, but clean gain into the limiter. Out from the limiter, I just go straight into a cab simulator. Now, it doesn't matter whatever comes after that, because the kernel of the sound is already there, and that's the sound that I can control.
Right.
If I don't have that controlled sound, then everything else turns to mush. So I know what I've got to do before it goes into anything else. So that clean sound is something that is like, I can get the dynamics out of the pick, I can hear all the notes individually pop out. So I'm going to put that into whatever it is that I want. And in this case, for that recording, it was through a sound on guitar rig, and it was I believe, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, it was Dave Gilmore patch.
Oh, okay.
And it was based on the high watt Whitehead, and I pushed that hard with a tube screamer. But the tube screamer didn't have any gain on it. I just pushed the front end of the amp head in the simulator really hard, and it gave this really nice warm overdriven sound that didn't overly distort, but I could color it without it all this kind of going on in the background, right? I didn't need any gates, I didn't need anything else extra on that, and I could just like back off on the background noise or whatever else is making by knocking back on the brilliance and the treble. So, and that was basically it. That was the sound. That's what you heard. But it's not. It's quite. I'm making it sound quite simple, but it's actually quite a complicated process when you get into it.
How long did it take you to arrive at that? You must have tried thousands of settings until you found it. I mean, it wasn't just.
I was all over it.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. Okay, it didn't just. I mean, I knew that I had the kernel sound because I use that all the time. And I'm actually still working and trying to find an overdrive sound for myself that I would like to use in the future. But I must have gone through, I don't know, maybe about 20 or 30 different rigs and messed around with them until I eventually settled on that one. And there is probably something else that I could get now that would sound even more authentic. In fact, I believe there's some amp guy who built Sean's original rig, who is building his own amp heads.
Right, Robert Jica.
That's him.
Yeah,
that's him. I would like to look a little bit more into that as well, because it sounds well interesting. In fact, I listened to some of his stuff on YouTube, and it sounded fantastic. Yeah.
He lived with Sean. They actually lived together for a while.
Really?
Yeah, they were roommates for a bit. Yep. Yep, right. And he tells the story in one of his videos on the anniversary of Sean's passing. I think last year he did a video, talked about that. But that's Robert Chica, and I know he used to be really, really into those Holmes amps. He had the Holmes amp in the studio, and I can't remember. I never looked behind the head of that thing, and other people that played with Sean all the time. Obviously, I didn't play with him. I was just engineering in the studio. But I think that Holmes thing was tubes. I believe there were tubes in that head. I don't know if it was.
It sounds like tubes. There's no way that.
Yeah, and so
I can't see that being solid state. It just sounds too. I could be wrong. But
could be right. That's what I'm saying. It's just that head. I never had a chance, because we had it in the studio. We had it up against this one special spot that Sean loved to keep it at whenever he cut. There's in that video, the walkthrough video that I did that's up on the Sounds Good channel, which incidentally shows the whole studio that Sean helped build.
Right.
It's like a custom recording studio, but there's a little inlet into the wall, and it has its own baffle behind it, and he would slip the amp right inside it, but he'd have two microphones, one on the front and then one back there, getting the sound of the back of the cabinet. It's really interesting. And but so I was never gonna pull it out and go, let me look at this thing. But I know the Jika head, he would have that out, and it would be sitting on like a table. So he was doing something with linking amps together. Eric Gales is really big on that. He learned that from Stevie Ray Vaughan. Eric Gales did when he was 15, cutting their Electra record, the Eric Gales Band. Stevie Ray Vaughan was in Studio B at Ardent with Jimmy Vaughan cutting Family Style. And that's how Eric got to meet Stevie Ray Vaughan. And he said he went in there and he had like 7 Marshall heads going one into the next one. It's like, really? Wow. It's like just, I don't even know. Yeah, he said they were like, it was like 3 were stacked on top of each other, and then like 3 were going out sitting on top of speaker cabinets, and it was I can't tell you because I wasn't there, so I don't know we're talking
Stevie Ray Vaughan here, right?
Yeah, Stevie Ray Vaughan. I
thought he was a big Dumble guy. Or Dumble, is he not? Or did he not use that to record? Or?
Well, it could have. I said Marshall heads. Eric says Marshall, but it doesn't mean that's what it was, because it could have been very well been those. But it was something with stringing all these heads together. Did something to like you keep pulling the. I'm talking out my back here, but something about the gain. You're only adding a little bit more gain each way down the chain, something like that. And there's
I can see color. I can see how that works. I can see how they work.
So that you can just like almost look at the string and it produces a note. Or you can just sit here and just hold your finger on it. The note goes for an hour. Like in Spinal Tap, you go have a bite, come back, still be hearing that one, So, but yeah, that's great. That's great, man. So, well, a lot of people really, really blown away by your interpretation of this, because it's so accurate. I felt like I was just listening to Sean, and a lot of people in these comments, like Busker Wilkie, that's great. He said everybody. I don't want to necessarily go through and name everybody's names in this thing, because I don't want to leave anybody out, because everybody. I mean, it's all positive, and
that's great.
So
I think like what was really interesting for me was like apart from the positive commentary, but the people that are coming in and they're getting something from it. And I mean, there's a lot of young kids. I think for me personally, it's almost like a responsibility. If I'm putting something out, I want them to kind of pick up on all the nuances of what Sean's doing. And I mean, it's like a tip to the man himself, and it's kind of, I want to do it justice. It's a responsibility to do it right, because there's small parts in his solos that shouldn't be missed out. And I think if I'd got anything to say about the actual solo itself, and to a younger player, is don't do what I did when I was younger, which is miss all the small parts out. I didn't miss them all out, but I missed some of them out. I was too in a rush to actually learn the complicated part of like what you're doing for that fast section, right? So all these like little sections and these little ornamentations, they're really important. And those little parts and the simpler parts are what make the other more technical passages. It sets them up to be something. So if you miss them out, it just sounds like it's just a bunch of notes going fast. But he struck a real balance, Sean, between one way of playing and the other, and I really appreciate that. And I'm hoping that some of the younger players they'll see that from the slow section in the video,
right?
Exactly what's happening, right?
Yeah, that seems to have had a very positive effect, that no one's really broken it down and played it slow like you did. You almost reinvented the wheel on that, because you've given people the opportunity on the video. I know a lot of people like to hit the play speed on a video and slow it down, and you play so damn fast when you get going that I don't think the frame rates of the video can keep up. So someone might lose their spot, trying to use that as they can hear it, obviously, but trying to watch you. But when you did the slow parts, what makes that fascinating to me is when you hit that at half speed, now you're even slow, and the camera's keeping right up with you, so they're seeing it's a new way of doing it. I haven't seen anybody online. I know you're not setting out to be a online guitar teacher or anything. You're Roy Marchbank, damn it. But you kind of did reinvent something there. I think you really did. So hopefully some other people will try that when they do their instructional videos and stuff, like the not Rick Beto, but I know there's a couple, I'm talking about,
Sure.
Just do it slow and let the chart show what those notes are, and then, damn it, hit slow on that, and you can. So, wow.
Yeah, it was slowing everything down, like when I scrubbed into the notation, and when you start breaking it down to that speed, it's like, what I really loved was the way that he was able to, like I've mentioned before, how he went from like in a split second to something that was so on the money, straight into a vibrato, but it was perfect. It wasn't just like something that was, I'll just throw that in there for the sake of it because I can.
Yeah. It
was obviously like pre-thought. It was placed there for a purpose, and I thought, man, I've been missing that all those years, So it's been a pleasure actually taking it apart, and I'm looking forward to the next two because I'm sure I'm going to learn something from them as well.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt. And eventually, obviously, onto Eric Gale.
Eric Gale, yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. As we're journeying forward, and that's going to be, I think, quite an experience. The way that you analyze the left-handed upside down, you'll be doing it right-handed, right side up. I don't know what you call it. It's not technical. But you know what I mean? And that's going to be interesting with, I think, your picking ability. You'll be able to capture exactly how it is that Eric, because Eric does these things where he's picking and finger picking at the same time. And so he'll start,
hybrid stuff going on.
There's some real hybrid stuff. And then Eric is technically right-handed. So he's doing a lot of his alpha thinking over here on the neck already, and then when he starts combining them, that's going to be really interesting to see, because there's a few people that have done right-handed versions of Eric's solos, but not the way that you just did the Sean thing. So I'm really excited about that. So
that's kind of interesting because I'm kind of interested because I'm dyslexic myself, so technically. Really, I'm a left-handed player. I started out when I first picked up the guitar. Felt more natural to play left-handed than it did right, but I picked up right because in my mind, it was like that's how you're supposed to hold a guitar. Because there was nobody else around to tell me, so I was just like, well. And there was one kicking around the house that was strung that way, so that's just the way I learned. But naturally, I'm a lefty. So who knows? Maybe so. Because of all these things, it might make things a little bit more simpler for me to work out. But I'm looking forward to it, man. It's going to be a real challenge getting through these next pieces, and hopefully do them all justice, and people can get a lot out of them. But I think it's important that there's stuff out there that's accurate for kids. If you're going to put stuff out there that's of any sort of merit, but this stuff is has to be so on the money. If you don't get it right, it's like, no, it's not quite right there. There was somebody came on there a while ago on the thread who were saying about the fingering for one of the passages, and it might have been different for the live version of Not Again. I'm not entirely sure, but it was certainly to my ears. It was 789, 789.
Oh, I know. I know the comment. Yeah. So that was an interesting one. Let me look. Let me see if I can pull that up, because we were both, and I don't know. He didn't go back and delete his comment, did he? I don't even know if I see it in there. There it is. Okay, Mr. D Amp Mods.
All right.
Okay, so here was the question. He said, you're playing the chromatic 789 Steve Morse influenced lick. And then something about, but on the recording to me sounds like 889 7997. Timing wise is the same. So I guess really the heart of the question there is, I'm not going to get into the math of it because I don't play like you. I can play the bass and keep a beat. That's about it. So the heart of the question to me there is exactly how Steve Morse influenced was that lick.
You know what that was when there's no doubt about that. It was like that's got Steve Morse's stamp all over it. And I mean he's put in like, you know, Eric Johnson's trademark in some parts of his solo as I took of the hat. But he's played it his own way as well. That's what makes it great. You know, he's taken that influence, but he's actually done something with it, where you can actually, when it's being played, you think that's definitely Sean Lane that's playing that Steve Morse influenced line. So it's like, you know, it's not just a case of like taking the Steve Morse line and going like a million people do with Yngwie Malmsteen and going, okay, I've heard that a gazillion times. That's another Yngwie Malmsteen chord.
Right.
He's actually done something creative with it, where he's made it flow into something that's his own. That's to be admired as well. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that there was the 789 when I actually picked it out. That's how it came across to my ears. Anyway, I think what's important is like the guts of it is bang on the money. But not just skipping any of the essentials.
Well, that's and I'm not going to reduce it just to say 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Maybe it's either one or whatever. But it'd be the same challenge with the Eric Gale stuff. There's going to be certain things where getting the notes exactly where they're supposed to be is just going to require, I mean, a unique quality that, you know, I mean, as accurate and on the money as you have Sean's solo, there's still some Roy Marchbank in that solo. There, you know, you didn't completely eliminate your own identity from it.
I can't. I'm just me. You know?
Exactly. And that's one of the things, I'll be honest with you, and I'll say it right here live to the world, you know, that's one of the things that really endears you towards me or me to you, whatever the term is you really are not up your own ass. I mean, you're just a decent, down-to-earth, and that's, to be so incredibly talented, it reminds me of Sean Lane, the years I spent with Sean. You could have a conversation with Sean about a book for 6 hours and just, you know, and the same, and Eric Gales is the same way. It's like you guys hit this level of understanding of music, and it just becomes like a Zen quality or some kind of spiritual quality. And
I mean,
not a lot of people are that way, though. Not a lot of people. There's some real you know, uppity cats. Like, I don't know how easy it is to talk sports with Yngwie Malmsteen. You know.
No, I mean,
I've heard.
I guess it kind of reminds. I guess why it depends how you actually got into music in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, when I first started, it was like this feeling. I just knew I was going to do it for the rest of my life. Once I was able to play my first piece of music all the way through, beginning to end, and it sounded like a piece of music. That was it. It was no question. It was just like, oh, the lights went off, boom. You know, that's what you're going to do. It presented to me in I mean, just in all its glory, you know. And it was something that quite overwhelming, and I always maintained that I want to try and get back to that same place with every single piece that I play.
And I'm going to pull up the ticker tape again as we're rolling into our final 5 minutes here.
Okay.
Because I want everybody to know that you also teach, and you can sign up and get with Roy for some guitar tutorials and instructional stuff. Let me find the ticker tape. I usually have it on a button, but there we go. And so as I'm looking at our sort of script here, you know, what is your practice schedule? And what, you know, how often, I mean, what, you know, what's your day like in terms of you know, just literally your practice schedule?
Normal practice day. When it depends really what I've got on. Every single day is different. I mean, for the moment just now, I've got a flamenco piece, so I'll practice like flamenco for like 3 hours straight before even, hit record.
Yeah.
But I mean, every day is completely different. But when I was learning and I was trying to build my technique before, I used to go to my friends and I'd practice for like sometimes anything between 12 and 18 hours straight a day. And there was one time I remember it was 2 weeks where it was 18-hour days straight for 2 weeks. And what I did to stop the boredom was every 5 minutes to 10 minutes, I would change on to something else that was demanding another skill set.
Yeah.
So I wasn't getting bored by repeating anything, and in actual fact I was starting something new and fresh, and I kept that going for the 18 hours, and I actually had my 18-hour schedule placed out where every single 10 minutes, sometimes 5, 10, 15, depending on the hour, it would change, and I would never go back and overplay that amount of time. So when day 2 came, I was going back to the same skill set problems, but I'd had a 6-hour gap, 4-hour gap, well, more 4 or 5 hours sleep on it.
Yeah.
And then I was hitting it again like 5 o'clock in the morning. So there's something magical about waking up at 4:30 in the morning, start work to practice at 5. And those first 4 hours, actually, I believe that technically it was of more help to my muscle memory than any other time within the practice day. So as a result of doing that for such a long time, I've decided that when I actually need to kick my fingers back into gear, I'll wake up intentionally at the early hours, and the first thing in the morning, 4:30, I'm on it at 5 o'clock, and I'll stop at 8, and I'll go on to doing different things, because I think those hours are of more benefit to me. And I'm not saying it'll be the same for everyone, but certainly for myself, I found brand new day, the air's clean, just get out there, get some fresh air, and I was like, boom, all the things happening.
Yeah, I mean, you've got you've got a family, you've got your friends, you got to take some time out too. So
you have. Otherwise, everything can go tits up fairly quick.
Well,
so,
I watched the interview you did with Rowan, and you were talking about sitting there and just doing that one exercise just for and then you realized that your shoulder was hurting your arm until you developed it into just that fluid motion with your wrist. So that's something that's really, really fascinating, and I think we're going to be hard pressed for a while to find somebody to compete with you on that, because your arm is literally relaxed now. All those hours, spent so many hours. I mean, you'd have a permanent welt on your shoulder blade probably from
Well, that was the main focus, because what I used to play like when I was really young, I had this real tensed up feeling, like it was like, I was ended up with like one arm bigger than the other. I looked deformed. I was like perpetually tensed, and I was playing that way all day, every day, or as long as I possibly could. So it was like static exercise all day, every day. So it was like ridiculously, defined, but just, stupidly like well built in the top. I thought, okay, I'm going to have to stop. This is all wrong. And I was starting to feel pain, and then my shoulder and my whole body, just from the posture from not playing correctly. So playing relaxed became almost like yogic, where you're breathing right, and you're relaxed as you're playing. And because of that, everything just started to flow. So I realized then I had to, when I was pushing the ante and when I was trying to push the fold and reach for the next plateau, I had to be relaxed as I was trying to do that, and that became something of an obsession, where every single time I would reach that plateau, when I was trying to reach for the next one, I had to keep the same thing in the back of my mind and not try and reach for the tension so much. So what I realized with every plateau, everybody's got their limit, their zenith.
Yeah.
And I kind of reached mine, and I thought, okay, I'm stopping here because there's other things I want to focus on, because technique's just one thing of this massive amount of information that you have to learn to be a complete, well-rounded musician. So, but I wanted to be relaxed when I was playing anything technical, so that I wasn't in any kind of extra stress or pain, especially when you're playing live in front of people. something happens to a person when you're playing live in front of people. You
Yeah.
start to realize what you really can do versus the things you can do in your bedroom. There's a big
Right.
difference, you know, and that in itself is another art form. I don't think that a lot of people tend to respect or realize until they do it.
I had the tendency, because I'm left-handed and I'm playing bass, I had a tendency really, really bad. And it got to where I finally I stopped playing bass so much, where I'm just even holding one note, I would realize that I had my entire arm and upper shoulder tensed, and I'm just sitting there playing just this one note on a bass, going don't. But even doing this example right now, I just somehow I habitually tense right here across my arm, and yeah, that would take. You almost have to not trick your own mind, but you have to, like yoga, like you're saying, you have to really get control of your body and start telling it to do what it is that you want it to do. Yeah. That's
I found if we're talking actually just about increasing your facility or your technique or your speed for some phrases, obviously different like notes, different numbers per string as you're crossing strings is of real importance. But to be relaxed when you're doing that and you're building up the speed as well, and not to worry so much about the metronome. Don't worry about that until later on. I mean, just try and push yourself up until you feel pain, repeat it, and keep on coming back and doing it. But then put on the metronome and back up to a speed that you feel comfortable. And every time you're pushing yourself a little bit further, when you back off, that metronome BPM is slowly going up, but you're relaxed and you're chilled when you're doing it. And that's really important. It's really important for a number of different reasons. If you're in a session for recording, if you're live on stage, if you're in company, good company, you just want to, pick up the guitar and play and be note perfect. You have to be relaxed. Otherwise, you're just going to have a bad night.
Yeah. And that's what I would find too. Like I would do a gig, and I was in a band where I was singing, not lead singing every single song, but I was singing probably about every other. And it got really bad because I would start singing and totally unconsciously just tense up my arm so bad. And the next day after the gig, it felt like I had been, hammering nails with my left hand, which did not feel natural. And this, not a lump, but I mean like a sore spot right by my neck. And that's how I discovered that's what I was doing. I was like, what is going on? And I didn't know it when I was young. I mean, by the time, I was 1920s and mid-20s and everything, just recovered really quickly, I guess. But wow. So, Okay, man. Well, we're going to get this thing sort of wrapped up so that we can get this uploaded in time. So we tried to get to some of the questions, and what I'd like to do is at some point, we'll just go live, complete, total, ask me anything type thing, and invite some people to come in, and we'll pop the questions up from the chat room. But two things. The Steve Vai quote. Congratulations on that acknowledgement. That is wonderful, man. That is so great that him and Dweezil Zappa too. Dweezil Zappa. You played with him in what year was that? Like 17.
2015.
15. Okay.
And,
London.
15, And I mean, wonderful to have that sort of support.
Yeah.
And continued support, which is great as well.
And so, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, when I first got in contact with Dweezil, I just dropped onto his site and was, oh, there's my guitar, and and I just finished playing this gig in Uzbekistan, because he seemed the sort of person that was genuinely interested in that kind of type of thing, and he was. And so from then on in, I think it was about 2004, I dropped into his site and I was like, oh, there's the guitar, there's the video, blah, blah. And I was like, let's go hang and, might do some recording at some point. So eventually when this came up and the gig down in London, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll drop down, delighted to hang with you and, jump up on stage for the Zombie with us. That's awesome. So, yeah, just really hit it off, man. It was just a pleasure to be around someone that's got their head screwed on and is an all-round decent guy,
Yeah.
But I'm really thankful to Steve for dropping that one in there as well, obviously.
And you've got a new record coming out. pretty soon. Pretty soon. You're working on several projects, I know, but this new one with Atma and Newer sounds like that's going to be off the chain.
Yeah, it's been a real a labor of love, this one.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when every musician, they try and push themselves a little bit harder with everything they release, and it reminds me a lot of what Holdsworth used to talk about, that he would like some records and less others. But I think anybody that's actually into that style of music they're going to get a lot out of this record. He's done a lot of work in the mix department, and we've both done a hell of a lot of work as far as recording and writing and scoring the work. So looking forward to its release. I'm not quite sure when yet or how it's going to develop or be out there, but sure, you'll be hearing about it when it does.
Yeah, well, we're waiting for. We're all with bated breath for that. So,
it's going to be a great.
I know we're looking at getting your sort of box set of your first two records or earlier stuff all together, maybe with this reward music thing or something. We're gonna work on that. So, that the remastering it all and getting it all into 2020, clarity. Not that there was anything wrong with it, but
the debut album, it was like there was the mastering was kind of almost non-existent, and it hadn't been mixed properly. And remember, we were talking the other day about like how we recorded these things and how sometimes mono sounds sometimes better than a lot of the stereo, and the old recordings sound so great. So I have to look at the old recordings and bring them up and see what can be done about the actual mix of them and remaster it. So I'm looking forward to that actually being a thing that I can bear to listen to, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on and coming up that's really exciting. And thank you for joining the voyage as my partner on the Mediacratics, as you guys can see up on the top of the screen. And down there under you, we got the Mediacratics Radio. We're on TuneIn 24 hours a day with the best in progressive jazz fusion. And this will be going out on it, and then when we do the AMAs and stuff like that. But we're going to continue this series, the Second Look series, 2 more Sean Lane videos, and then we're going to start looking at Eric Gales, and then hopefully we'll have Roy back out on the road, and we'll get some live footage of Roy out there in the jams. That would be great. But meanwhile, we're taking advantage of the time we have here online doing these podcasts. And so keep up with us on the Mediacratics.com. Roy, I'm going to bring your music up, and we're going to just let you play us out. We got the Widowmaker's Highway, if you ever... Damn. This man rips. There we go.
Back some memories, aren't they?
No, you can't even do it. Okay. Alrighty. To hear the rest of that, you got to go to Roy's channel. How about that? Go to RoyMarchbankGuitar.com and follow Roy on YouTube and the Mediacratics on YouTube, and you got everything you need. And we will return with our podcasting and live stuff later, and we'll let you guys know on the websites and social medias and stuff. And so thank you again, Roy. Really appreciate it, brother, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Thank you, man.
All right.